The Atari 2600 Plus has been out for a couple of months now, and I finally have time to do a proper review of it. Let's find out if the Atari 2600 Plus is worth buying for newcomers and seasoned retro gamers. As we unbox, take a closer look at the new hardware and compare it with the original game cartridges and peripherals. We start our Atari 2600 Plus review with the unboxing. Inside we have the 2600 Plus, which we will take a closer look at shortly. Underneath is an instruction sheet. Inside the box are HDMI and USB Type-C cables to power the 2600 Plus. And in the final box is the game cartridge and Atari CX40 Plus joystick. The Atari 2600 Plus remains faithful to the original 4-switch design model. There are power, TV type, game select and game rest switches, and in the middle is a slightly wider cartridge slot to make it easier to insert and remove cartridges. The front has the iconic wooden veneer and Atari logo which lights up when powered on, a nice touch. The back, from left to right, has a 16:9 and 4:3 aspect ratio switch, a DB9 port and a difficulty switch for player 2. In the middle is a HDMI port, and then there's a difficulty switch and DB9 port for player 1. And furthest to the right is the USB Type-C port for the power. It's around 20% smaller in size than the original Atari 2600 model, and slightly larger than the 2600 Junior model. While I would have liked it to be the original size, it was quite large to be fair. It does keep the original design, and the smaller size fits modern TV units, for example. The CX40 Plus visually looks identical to the original joystick. Apart from the wear and tear on my original joystick, you would barely notice any difference. In terms of using the new joystick, it feels just like the original. A little stiffer where it's not worn in, but I could swap between the two with no issues. The included Atari 2600 Plus cartridge is physically the same size as an original 2600 cartridge. You will notice the Plus cartridge has a row of dip switches, which you can use to select which game to play. The cartridge comes with 10 games on it. You refer to the cartridge label and move the dip switches off or on respective to the game you wish to play. We will check out the games in a moment. It is simply a matter of connecting the HDMI cable to your display, the USB Type-C cable to a USB power supply, plug in your joystick, insert the cartridge and power on. On boot, you will be presented with the classic Atari logo for a few moments and then a screen to inform you that it's loading the game. It usually takes a few seconds to dump the contents of the cartridge to the Atari 2600 Plus, and then prepare your jaw to drop at the quality of the video output. If you had the original Atari 2600, you will remember the awful RF output with dull colours and fuzzy graphics. Here we have bright colours and sharp graphics, nicely upscaled for modern TVs. As mentioned, you get 10 games on the included Atari 2600 cartridge. We will briefly show gameplay from each. Adventure is an exploration game where you must recover the enchanted chalice and return it back to the Golden Castle. Combat is a great 1 or 2 player game where players must shoot at and hit their opponents to score. You have a tank, biplane and jet fighters to choose from, and it's great to play against a friend. Dodge 'em is a maze-based action game for up to 2 players. You race around the track and run over the dots to score, all the while avoiding the opponent's car. Haunted House is an exploration game set in, a haunted house. You need to recover 3 pieces of a magical urn and return them to the entrance. Maze Craze is another maze-based action game where you must navigate a maze of city blocks from left to the right side of the screen whilst avoiding robbers and blockades. Missile Command is a classic shoot 'em up where you must defend the planet against a missile attack. It's a great game that still holds up well today. I'm glad this game is on here. Real Sports Volleyball is an up to 2-player game of volleyball. Nothing much else to say here, you all know how to play it. I never played Surround until the Atari 2600 Plus. It's essentially an up to 2-player game of Snake. You navigate the screen and try to block or force your opponent to run out of space to move. Video Pinball is a pinball game for up to 2 players. It is a fairly basic pinball game, but quite fun as you can compete against someone for a high score. And last but not least is the classic Yar's Revenge. It's a single player shooter where you must break down the enemy's shields and destroy the little shit hiding inside. A great game to play and happy to see it included on the cartridge. There is a good selection of games on the cartridge for 1 or 2 players. The quality of the games is not too bad. There are enough popular ones mixed in with lesser known titles for balance. There are additional cartridges you can purchase separately, including a 4-in-1 with paddle controllers and Berserk Enhanced Edition. I would guess over time more cartridges will be released, but you can of course use original Atari 2600 and 7800 game cartridges, which we will check out next. In my opinion, the best thing about the Atari 2600 Plus is that you can play original 2600 and 7800 cartridges. Up until the past few years, you could pick up a console with a bundle of games for next to nothing, or bundles of games for a few pounds or dollars. I have close to 100 original 2600 cartridges and around a dozen 7800 cartridges, and apart from one faulty cartridge, the majority of them load. I do say load and not working, as us PAL owners currently get a slightly raw deal when it comes to the emulation. There are issues with the colours for PAL games, which are being worked on in a forthcoming firmware update. I do have the beta firmware installed, so I can't show the differences in PAL and NTSC colours. There are still some issues, but these will be fixed before a next firmware update. There are also some issues with Atari 7800 cartridges. While I do not own many original carts, a fair number did not work or have issues whilst playing. Again, these have been worked on for the firmware update, and I can confirm many more are definitely playable now. Also, do remember to give the cartridges a good clean with some IPA before using them. The amount of grime that builds up over the years will often cause the cartridges to not make good contact and simply not work or run correctly. If you own any of the original Atari controllers, you can use them with the 2600 Plus, as well as use the new CX40 Plus with the original model. I did have the original pedal controllers, but I've somehow lost them whilst moving house, but they do work according to online reports. The Atari 2600 touchpad is unfortunately not supported, despite the compatibility list saying Star Raiders works. Support has not been added in the firmware update, but it will be looked into at a later date. The Atari 7800 joypad and Proline joystick both work fine. One thing to consider is the Mega 7800. It is a Sega Master System and Mega Drive controller adapter made for the original consoles. You can connect controllers from both systems and they work great with the Atari 2600 Plus. It only costs £15 and is highly recommended. And a quick mention for flash cartridges. The Atari 2600 Harmony cartridge is partially compatible with the 2600 Plus. You will not be able to boot to the usual menu, but you can flash a single game via the serial port, and it mostly works fine from my own testing. Unfortunately, the 7800 GameDrive is not compatible. The flash cart uses FPGA based hardware and is not compatible with the 2600 Plus method of dumping games. As a standalone product, the Atari 2600 Plus is a great look back at one of the most iconic retro gaming consoles. The reproduction of the console and joystick is of high quality and remains faithful to the original design with a few modern updates. The level of emulation in the current firmware is passable. In the forthcoming update, this is far improved, and there are plans to continue with further firmware updates, which is great. However, when comparing to say the recently released consoles such as the SNES Classic or Mega Drive Mini, they came with 20 to 40 games and offer far greater value for your money. Getting just 10 games with the 2600 Plus is quite low, and in some ways does not offer as much replayability as many of the SNES or Mega Drive titles. I think 20 games would have given a far greater value for money as a standalone purchase. You can of course buy the original cartridges. Collecting 2600 and 7800 cartridges was once very easy. You could pick up a bundle for next to nothing, but over the past few years the prices have gone up, making it far more expensive to buy even one cartridge. I haven't bought any since 2020. Atari will likely make more multi-cartridges to buy, but nothing has been announced yet. If you do have a collection of original cartridges, then this is not so much of an issue. You will probably purchase the 2600 Plus simply for the fact that it's new hardware that plays your games on modern TVs in amazing quality. If so, buy one now. You won't be disappointed in any way. Personally, I fall into the latter category. I have a decent collection of cartridges, and for me the Atari 2600 Plus is perfect. I can now play games on the living room TV without having to use lower quality video output with my original 2600 and 7800 consoles. As a note, the Atari 2600 Plus was purchased with my own money and the review is not sponsored in any way. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel as it will entice me to make more reviews like this. Thanks.